Hello Scoundrels, welcome back to the Scoundrels Den. I hope you're all doing well. If you'd like to join the Scoundrels Den, feel free to hit the subscribe button down below and join the clan. Also, thanks to G2A for sponsoring the channel. There's a reference link in the description below. As you can see, we are going to be talking a little bit about the Yordles, the 5 new upcoming champions that are being released in League of Legends. Now, instead of doing an ability breakdown and talking about all of them, I'll do that once they get released officially. If you want to go to Yikes on YouTube, he's already got access to the champions and has already done an ability breakdown on all of them, of which you can go and have a look at his channel. I thought better to point you towards his channel than me do it a half-hearted job myself. Also, I found this footage of Teemo online. I tracked it down to I think a Chinese YouTube channel, which I'll also link in the description below because he's got access to all of the same champions and skins that Yikes has, and I think it's only fair that I give him credit for this footage that I found on the website. So we're going to be talking a little bit about these Yordle champions, but mostly I'm going to be focusing on Teemo. Mainly because he's the one champion that massively breaks away from his PC variant. The rest of the champions in Wild Rift, the rest of the Yordles are relatively close, if not with only some small changes to their PC variant. The only difference is that Corki, his Gatling gun, his third ability, follows the target when it's locked onto it, which is different to his PC variant. But the majority of the champions coming to Wild Rift in the Yordle package are very similar to their PC counterparts. If you don't know the PC counterparts, again, I would encourage you to go and look at Yikes' videos. But Teemo diverges from his PC counterpart in a pretty significant way, and I think it's going to make him much stronger, especially in the laning phase where Teemo is classically strong, than his PC counterpart, which is, I think, going to make Teemo better than you might expect coming into Wild Rift. So, in Wild Rift, Teemo's passive is it deals 50 bonus magic damage on impact, his basic attacks, an additional 35 magic damage over 4 seconds. Now, just be aware that this is Teemo's ability when he's at max level. It'll obviously be much lower when he's at level 1. And his first ability is Blinding Dart, where she fires a missile that blinds the enemy and deals a flat amount of magic damage. Now, his first ability, his Q, is exactly the same as his PC counterpart. However, his passive is different. In his passive on the PC version is Guerrilla Warfare, which allows Teemo to go stealth when he's staying still and allows Teemo to enter stealth when he's in a brush. Upon breaking that stealth, he'll gain a burst of attack speed. That was the passive on the PC variant. And this is important for a couple of reasons, and I'll talk about it once we get to the rest of his abilities. But Teemo, having the passive Toxic Shot, where his basic attacks are always going to deal magic damage and then a little bit of magic damage over time, means that he's going to be incredibly annoying in the laning phase, because on the PC variant, you had to choose between leveling your first ability, your Q, your Toxic Dart, or your third ability, which was your Toxic Shot. Leveling your third ability increased the amount of damage that you dealt over time and the magic damage on impact of your basic attacks. That no longer is required, and you can actually max your first ability on Teemo whilst also retaining the toxic damage basic attack, which is essentially a two-pronged problem, because now Teemo is going to deal insane amounts of damage to you in the laning phase. His second ability, Move Quick, where he gains movement speed and is active, rolling a short distance, is similar to the PC version. The PC, you do not get the active where you can roll a short distance. However, the Guerrilla Warfare, which used to be the passive for Teemo on the PC version, is now his third ability, and it also allows Teemo to move around for up to 5 seconds at max level, meaning that he's going to have the ability to move around fights relatively easily. In general, I would say that Teemo has got stronger in Wild Rift compared to his PC variant. And again, that third ability, on the PC variant, you would usually choose to level your E or your third ability first. You'd sometimes choose to level your first ability, your Q first, but overall, you would have to make the decision between the first ability and the third ability. On Wild Rift, you're almost certainly going to level your first ability first. The other two are not that important for combat, especially in the laning phase. So you're almost certainly going to level your first ability, which deals a burst of magic damage, and then you're going to get a passive ability that grants you magic damage on hit and also poisons the enemy for magic damage over time. The main difference between Teemo's Noxious Traps on the Wild Rift variant compared to the PC variant is that they only last for 2 minutes, which makes sense because the games don't last as long as the PC version. On the PC version, they last up to 5 minutes, which can be a real pain in the ass. But yes, they only last for 2 minutes in the Wild Rift variant. So yeah, that makes Teemo infinitely better, especially in the laning phase. And this is how I think the Yordles are going to play out in terms of their respective tiers. I think Tristana is going to be an S+ tier AD carry. The reason I think Tristana is going to be S+ tier is because she combos very well with a lot of the supports in the meta right now, including Alistar. The explosive shot all-in combination at level 2 or even level 1 is incredibly strong with Alistar, especially when they get the level 2 spike. And actually, there are very few, apart from Misfortune, there are very few AD carries that I think trade as well as Tristana in the laning phase straight up with their abilities. Also, the waves are very small and Tristana is going to be able to push them very consistently, and also getting explosive shot on towers is OP as hell, and it's going to be very, very impactful in Wild Rift, I feel, especially because in general it takes a little bit longer than for the bot lane, because most AD carries don't have an empowered basic attack to deal to the turrets than sort of like top laners and mid laners do. So I think that we're probably going to see Tristana played a whole bunch in Wild Rift. As well as her passive, giving her extra range, and we don't have any AD carries apart from Jinx, who is required to slow her attack speed and use her rocket form to get her increased range. Tristana gets that naturally, and we also level up relatively quickly in Wild Rift, so yes, I'm expecting Tristana to be a relatively good AD carry. Okay, so looking at Lulu then. The reason I rate Lulu so highly on the Yordle tier list, because this is basically just rating them against each other realistically, I think Lulu will excel in her role. There aren't many AD carries that do, or sorry, rather supports that do what she does right now, and especially in an assassin-heavy meta, Lulu kind of shines. Her ultimate will keep your AD carry safe, or your person of choice safe, as well as having a shield, a massive slow, and being able to hex a target and turn them into a completely, I think it's a cupcake or a squirrel. She basically renders them useless with her hex. I don't think there are any supports in the meta that do what Lulu does right now. And she's a bit of a lane bully as well. I think Lulu's going to be an incredibly strong support. I envision her being played a lot upon release. If you're a support main, I would definitely consider Lulu as part of your arsenal. She's an incredibly good support for keeping your carries safe, but also has a good solo carry potential and scales well with AP. Something that we see a lot of supports do right now is that they generally tend to go very AP heavy, and Lulu scales well with AP too. In S tier, I just spent this entire video talking about Teemo. Why is Teemo in S tier? Well, I tell you what, that's higher than he'll ever get on the PC variant, that's for sure. Teemo's going to be an insane lane bully. He's going to have a lot of split push potential, in my opinion. He is definitely going to be something that is very difficult to deal with, despite having very few bad matchups. I mean, really, there are like Gragas and Camille, similar to the bad matchups for Kennen. The reason he's not S+ tier, though, is that he is absolutely useless in team fights. His role and his stealth is potentially going to help him out just a little bit, but honestly, he is not a team fight champion. He doesn't offer anything other than just damage and a little bit of utility through his slowing of his mushrooms and the blind. But realistically, if you take Teemo in the Baron lane or Teemo in the mid lane, you're often sacrificing utility on your team. Often top lane or Baron lane champions are things like Malphite. They've got engage potential. Gragas, who's got lots of displacement and CC himself. Camille, who has a lot of CC and lockdown. Teemo doesn't have any of that. So when you pick Teemo, you're purely picking him for the laning phase, as well as being able to split push and be a menace in that regard. Sometimes you can snowball out of control and start one-shotting people, but Teemo is never going to be a staple pick unless he is just so obnoxiously overpowered that you have to pick him. And I think obviously there is a chance with that, with the fact that they swap the passive and his third ability around, but I don't think he's going to be one of those picks that absolutely thrives in a coordinated team environment or in the higher elos, because I think, again, he doesn't offer much apart from being a lane dominant bully, and outside of the laning phase, that's where Teemo may actually end up struggling. Kennen is pretty much the polar opposite to Teemo. Although she is a lane bully, I think Kennen's a girl, she is a lane bully and has, again, very few bad matchups in the top lane apart from things like Camille and Gragas. Or in the Baron lane. I think the problem with Kennen is going to be, as someone rightly pointed out in one of my videos, maybe the wave clear is going to restrict Kennen being dominant in the mid meta right now, because again, mid is very, very dominated by fast wave clear mid laners who can roam a lot. I do think the smaller waves and the fact that the waves are easier to clear will help Kennen out in that regard. I also think that her ultimate is going to be unparalleled in terms of teamfight utility. I don't think there are many other champions in the game that offer what Kennen does right now. The problem that Kennen is going to have is itemization. Usually, Kennans would want Hextech Belt and Stasis. So there are two in the traditional PC version. There was always two items that made Kennen good. You had the belt, which could dash you forwards, and you had the Zhonya's, which could put you into stasis when you've activated your ultimate. You now actually have to choose between the two of them in Wild Rift. You can no longer have the Hextech Belt and the Stasis enchant for Kennen, which is actually going to potentially limit some of the teamfight utility of this champion. Although I do think teleport boots and being able to teleport to any area of vision is definitely going to help Kennen out. Again, that's another boot enchant that you have to choose over the things like Zhonya's and Hextech. And these are all items, and including teleport, these are all things that made Kennen really good as a pick on the PC variant that I think are going to limit what Kennen can do in Wild Rift. Of course, you just have to keep your eyes on the map and roam consistently on Kennen to have the impact with the ultimate, but I do feel like some of the itemization choices are going to limit what Kennen is capable of in Wild Rift. And Corki. I think Corki is going to be solid. Don't get me wrong, me putting Corki in A tier does make it look like Corki is worse than the rest of them, but I do think Corki will stand the test of time and stand the test of nerfs of all the other ones better. Corki is a safe pick. Like if you're thinking about unlocking one of these, Corki is safe in the regards that he's always going to be good. Like I think Corki is in the PC variant just been good for a long period of time. He's never been OP. There have been points where Corki was picked very frequently, but Corki's never really been considered an OP champion. He's always just been good and dependable. And I think that's what Corki's likely going to be in Wild Rift right now. I do think that the meta is very assassin heavy, very kind of high impact roam heavy. And although Corki can do that, he doesn't have the same kind of impact that some of the other roaming champions do right now. But he scales really well. He's a team fight monster, and his package is very good for controlling objectives, which is something that is incredibly important to Wild Rift. I have tentatively put him slightly lower than the other guys just because he's the one that doesn't seem maybe as OP as the rest. However, I have recommended to people if you want to unlock one of them that I just guarantee you will be good, Corki will just be good. And so I think he's a good and safe unlock in that regard. But this is all speculative. I, of course, will do a proper analysis once we've had these champions released and played a little bit with them in Wild Rift. But hopefully that gives you a bit of an indication about some of the champions. And again, I would recommend going checking out Yaikes' channel or the Chinese guy's channel that I linked in the description. I think it's Chinese. I'm sorry. I have no idea which language the characters are. Someone can help confirm or deny that for me. But yes, please, feel free to go and check out their channels for individual champion breakdowns. And I will see you very shortly.